Hey everyone, welcome to North Courts. We are coming to you live to preview the Canada Men's Olympic Qualifying Tournament. We got the usual suspects with me, Javon Shepard, Megan McPeak, but joining us is a special guest, Raptors beat reporter for The Athletic, Blake Murphy. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, V. And just a heads up ahead of time, when we're back in gyms, this is the Raptors Republic 3-on-3 team right here. The three of us, Megan too, if she's in town, but this is the group now.
I'm liking our chances right off the top. Hey, speaking of liking our chances, Canada, obviously we've seen the group cut down to 12 now. Megan, let's start with you. Who excites you the most on that roster right now?
I think much like everybody, it's the fact that Andrew Wiggins has committed to Team Canada and he's committed to the senior men's national team to try and qualify for Tokyo. And just bringing that mentality that he had throughout this entire NBA season, we saw probably and arguably one of his best performances throughout the entire season that he's had in his young NBA career with the Golden State Warriors. And what he was able to do on the defensive end for me was very impressive. We know what we're going to get from him offensively. We've seen him be able to stretch the floor, but what he was able to do defensively, for me, joining Team Canada, I think is going to bring some more grit and grind to this men's national team.
Javon, what about you?
I think I'm going to throw it back a little. I'm excited for Aaron Dornicamp. This is a guy that I myself have played with. Many people, present day or present Canadian fans, probably don't know much about him, but he's been in Europe for some years, and he's the consummate pro. He's gotten better over his career, and I think he brings that toughness, that grit, that mentality that you need to be successful on this international stage. He's a guy that early in his career he couldn't shoot the ball from the beach into the ocean. But now, he's a 40% three-point shooter, and he just understands the game from the European level. And I think that's going to help a lot of the NBA guys that this Canadian team has in just understanding the nuances, the rules. And you're going to need that, especially with a guy like Melvin Ejim missing. So, for me, it excites me to see a friend of mine, somebody that I've been, he's war-tested. And he's definitely going to be extremely helpful for this club. So we'll see how it pans out for him.
Blake, you got a big hitter or you got a sneaky name for us?
Oh, I don't know how sneaky it is at this point, but, Megan and Javon both mentioned players who are probably going to have to play up a position or play around positions in this tournament with Canada's, size limitations. And I think the guy that I'm most interested to see do exactly that is Lou Dort. He's only 6'4", but I think everyone knows at this point the strength, the build, the defensive versatility on Dort. We know that Nick Nurse is a coach who's very comfortable letting his guards guard up a position or three positions at times. Dort's also a guy, we haven't seen him have a senior national team cap before, but if you think back to the last time Canada played here in Toronto, as they were getting ready for those games, they played against kind of a Canada B team. And I remember hearing raves about how Dort looked in that environment and how much he pushed the senior team. I think he's been itching for this for a while. I think he's going to be awesome, even has a chance to start maybe.
Yeah, it should be exciting to see him play, no doubt. Megan, on that note, we know what Nick Nurse's fundamentals are going to be. It's going to be that high-pressure defense to get out in transition as much as possible. But what is maybe Canada's biggest weakness going into this tournament?
I think it's the simple fact that they're young. As Blake mentioned, they are undersized and they are lacking experience on the international level. I know, Javon mentioning what Dornicamp brings, and they do have a few guys who have played internationally in their professional careers. But when you get a group of guys together to play internationally for your country, that game changes a little bit. So I think their biggest weakness is going to be the adjustment that the NBA guys are going to have to make. And they're going to have to make it on the fly, in game, in live action, which can be very, very stressful. It can be very frustrating. And I think teams are going to be able to take advantage of that. It'll be very interesting. But to pick up on what Blake said about Lou Dort, I'm very excited to see how he defends guys, because the one thing I love about the international game, you have a lot more leeway when it comes to getting in guys' shorts and bodying them up. And Lou Dort prides himself on the defensive end, especially when he tries to out-physical you. So I think playing internationally, this is where we're going to get to see him truly expand his defensive game, because he can be a little more handsy with guys when it comes to the defensive end. But I think their lack of experience and their their young roster is going to be an issue for them against teams like a Greece, who is battle tested in international play.
So Megan, I'm gonna trump you a bit. I'm gonna go against the grain like we usually do here. We always bump heads, but but I'll say this. They lack some experience, but Canada is now the team that's tough. You have guys like Lou Dort, you have guys like RJ, Aaron Dornicamp. These guys go to war every day. So I think that toughness comes with will, and they're going to be able to trump the lack of experience with that. What I would say is a weakness right now is the ability to shoot the three ball. They have a number of guys, like you've said, that are interchangeable, that can play up a couple positions, that can play down a couple positions. But this is not NBA anymore. This is not NBA basketball. There's no defensive 3 seconds. You're going to need guys on the perimeter that can shoot the ball, that can force defenses to play honest and open up the paint, open up the key, so guys like RJ, guys like Andrew Wiggins, and Lou Dort can really get to the rack. And like you said, you can play through a bit more. The less people there are in the paint, now you're able to get your and ones. Now you're able to finish. Now you get a little more flow out of your offense. So if I was going to say anything, it would probably be the three-point shooting and just having a guy, or just maybe one guy that would be a sniper that can open up the floor a bit more. But again, you have a number of guys that can do a number of different things. Play up a couple positions. You have a guy like Andrew Nicholson who can do a lot down low. He's a scoring machine. When you think about him and scoring, he has that blue check. That blue check on Instagram, that verified? He's a verified, a certified scorer. So there's a lot of different things that they can do with this group.
Yeah, I think, I went back. That's a good point, Javon. I went back and I looked at, the 2015 Americas roster, because Eric Karina and I were batting it around. And, you look at, and maybe I thought at first there wasn't a ton of scoring. And then Brady Heslop shot 50% on threes for the whole tournament. And Nick Stauskas banged in, 40+%. So, maybe some pressure on a Michael Mulder there. I think the area I'm most concerned is probably the size. And I know, in general, you can get away with it without a natural 7-foot rim protector.
Megan, do you mind if we interject?
Of course, go ahead. Yeah, so the size here is maybe you can get around it, but when you're looking at teams like the Czechs and Turkey, size could be a real issue here. And Canada has only 3 players listed at 6'9" or taller in Dwight Powell, Trey Lyles, and Andrew Nicholson. And Nicholson, Javon mentioned, he's a scoring machine. He might now have to get stretched from, hey, maybe he was playing bench minutes as a stretch 5 to maybe he's like a really big rotation piece now. It's going to be an interesting test for Nick Nurse, because if you look at, not to look past Greece and China, but if you look ahead to, say, a semifinal matchup with the Czechs, they move the ball and attack advantages really, really well, to where they don't want you to stay at home. They want you to send a second body to Jan Vesely, send a second body to Andrej Balvin, and then their playmaking can kind of take advantage of that. So Nick Nurse is going to be tested a little bit. Do you trust the guy giving up 3-4 inches, or do you send help and trust your zone principles when really you've only used them in practice? And then if you look ahead to a potential final or semifinal against Turkey, they have a ton of size. They might start Furkan Korkmaz at shooting guard, and he's 6'7". They've got Omer Yurtseven, Alperen Şengün, the potential lottery pick, who's another kind of interior scoring machine. So Canada's going to be, they're going to be tested. Not only, how up for it is a guy like Trey Lyles, who we haven't seen play a ton of high leverage minutes the last year or so. And then also, really how far can this defensive versatility stretch against size?
So I'm going to jump in anyway, since the world already heard. Let me see, I'm going to interject. But we thought my mic was off. No. But, Blake, when I hear about the size, I know a lot of people have concerns with the lack of size with this Canadian team. And I think sometimes they get caught up in the names that are missing as opposed to the size. Because the reality is, a Boucher, Tristan Thompson, they still are just hovering around that 6'9", 6'10" mark. I think what you get is just guys with different skill sets. So it's 1A or 1B in the way I look at it. It really boils down to the approach of Nick Nurse and the schemes or the tactics that he's going to use. And we know he has a lot of unorthodox ways of offensive styles or defensive styles. He could throw 4 wings out there with 1 guard, or he can have 1 big and 4 wings, or guards across the table. So I think with this line, you still get the versatility you need. And I really don't think Canada on a whole, when you're looking at the deep pool, like it is a deep pool of players, a deep pool of talent. But, you know, even if you have all those guys, do you get all your NBA guys, rather, the ones that people are really concerned about that they're missing, do you get much more size? I don't necessarily think so.
Yeah,
I think, though, sorry, Blake, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Meg.
I was going to say, I think, Shep, you make a great point, but if you were to plug in, excuse me, a Kelly Olynyk or a Tristan Thompson, you might not get a huge difference in size, but what you do get is guys who are used to playing above their size against guys bigger than them on a nightly basis. So I do think, you know, with your 1A, 1B point, it's a great point. I just think that when you have guys who are used to playing guys that are bigger than them on a nightly basis, the way that we've seen a Tristan Thompson do it on the biggest stage in the NBA Finals, it bodes well because they have the experience. So I think that's where, for me at least, the lack of experience with the lack of size comes into play in these situations.
So I've thought about this as well, and I thought, okay, if you plug and play with a couple of guys, what do you give up? What do you get? Now, again, my concern is the shooting piece. I think a guy like Andrew Nicholson may be a bit undersized based on how we're looking at it here, but he gives you that scoring, especially not having, you know, knockdown shooters on the perimeter. He gives you that scoring inside that's going to force defenses to collapse and focus on him, and then get your RJs, your Andrews, a couple more open shots that are more rhythm and can get your offense flowing from that standpoint. So it's really, like you said, you know, those guys are used to playing bigger opponents. But again, it's what are you giving up, what are you taking, and what do you value depending on the line.
Hey, one thing we know is Nick Nurse is going to work out all the permutations and combinations that he can put together with this lineup. So I don't think we have to worry about having too many options. Those of you watching, make sure you hit us up with questions at CBC Olympics. Thank you for joining us on Twitter for this live show. Let's get to one final big question from our panel. Melvin Ejim is going to be a big loss for this roster. Obviously, he can play multiple positions. He has that veteran experience at the FIBA level as well. He would have been the Mr. X Factor for this squad. So without him, who steps in for you, Blake?
Yeah, so I don't think necessarily that my answer is going to fill into Ejim's rotation spot. I think leadership-wise, Javon made a great case for Dornicamp kind of taking on that role, right? If I look at the way this roster is constructed, especially now without Ejim, you know, that's a guy you could trust for big minutes at the 4. So maybe you're playing Wiggins at the 4 a little bit more. Maybe, you know, everyone's kind of sliding up a position. And Dort, we talked about. So the question that I have then is, after Corey Joseph, who is the second guy Nick Nurse trusts to run the offense with the second unit? And he talked a lot about Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who's more naturally kind of a scoring combo guard, getting some point guard reps in camp. Andrew Nembhard, you know, made it to the point in the process where he was an alternate in Victoria initially because they need that guard depth. But the guy that I'm watching is Trey Bell-Haynes. And I think, you know, spiritually, I think he's a good Ejim fill-in because Ejim's always been a guy that when Canada basketball fans watch these tournaments, it's like, how is this guy not in the NBA? He does so much stuff. You know, he checks every box, and maybe he's not elite at one thing, but there's nothing he's bad at. Well, I think Trey Bell-Haynes is going to kind of become the Canada basketball, the most tweeted about guy in that second unit. He's still a little off radar, but he is very, very good, and he's grown a lot. And not, you know, inexperienced with the senior national team level, but 25 years old with some really good international experience overseas at this point. So Trey Bell-Haynes is the guy that, you know, kind of my biggest question mark and my biggest guy that I'm most excited to see what they can do.
Javon, who's your X Factor?
Two sides to it. I think RJ is going to be the catalyst for this team. One, you know, I heard him speak the other day, and he said, you know, Canada basketball and this FIBA basketball is what he grew up playing. He had to adapt to the NBA. He doesn't have to adapt to FIBA here. I think the fact that the last time that this team was at the Olympics was, you know, his father was captain of this team, head of this team. So I think there's a lot more passion. There's a lot of legacy there that's going to roll over for him into just, you know, getting this team back to where it needs to be. The other person is probably somebody that, you know, nobody's really going to speak of, and it's a coach for me. I think Nathaniel Mitchell is somebody that's going to play a very important part with this team, an assistant coach with the national team here, because he has a relationship with all these guys on the roster. Now you think about it, all of these players come from different respective teams and are probably the go-to guy or the man on their team, not the superstar, but play impact roles. When you come to the Canadian national team now and playing on this level, you have to sacrifice a lot for the betterment of this team. A lot of these guys that we starting or have the ball in their hands may not. You maybe have 1 or 2 touches per game, or now you may become, a defensive guy. Your role changes. Now, somebody in between has to relay that message and help guys understand why it matters, and that taking a lesser role or the sacrifice that you're making still has an impact. So a guy like Nikhil that was coming into his own in the NBA season, you may come back here and you're in a different position. You're playing point guard. Now you're here to facilitate, may not have a scoring role. So I think just understanding that message is going to go such a long way. And I know he probably won't be on camera. He's probably not going to get as much notoriety. But me being somebody that's been in that position before, having somebody that relays that message and helps you understand it, and still can stroke your ego a bit when you get the job done, helps that balance, helps the team.
How about you, Megan?
You know what? I hate when me and Shep are in agreement, because he took my person. I was actually going to say Nathaniel Mitchell, and I hate when me and Shep agree on something. So I'm going to pivot, because he eloquently and articulately and poignantly explained exactly why I think Nathaniel Mitchell is a huge part for the success of this team. So I'm going to shift and go someone who is coming off of injury. Came off injury late in the season on the pro side of things, made a little bit of a run into the playoffs and is now available for Team Canada, and that's Dwight Powell. I think he's going to be very important for this team, because he has the experience of simply just playing the game. And I know he's coming from the NBA side of things, but I think his experience of having to take time off and recover from injury did something that I don't wish on any player in any sport, and that is you are sidelined and you have the ability to see the game completely different. And he was seeing the game that was spearheaded by a guy who's probably one of the most prolific players in international gameplay, and that's Luka Doncic. And being able to watch him, I think, take the international style of play he has and put it in the NBA, I think allows Dwight Powell to now take his style of NBA play and make it an advantage to him and Nick Nurse and Team Canada in international play, which a lot of people, we talk about the fact that it's harder to adjust from NBA to international. Obviously, Shep just mentioning RJ adjusting from international to NBA, which we don't typically see from North American guys. But I think Dwight Powell is going to bring that experience of watching the game and just having to see the game from a different perspective. I think that's going to be so useful for him at this level of play to be able to take advantage of guys, because whether he starts or comes off the bench, depending on matchups, in-game adjustments, I think he's going to see the game differently, and he'll be able to bounce ideas off of guys like Nate Mitchell and Nick Nurse when it comes down to, close games, adjustments in game, trying to take advantage of certain guys, and simply even, talking to guys on the floor and being an extra coach and an extra set of eyes for the coaching staff. So I think he's going to be very important for Team Canada as well.
I love that pick, Megan. Blake, we're gonna sign off here. We got a special question coming in from William Liu, a beat reporter for Yahoo Sports Canada. Looking at the final roster, do you see Nick playing smaller or going bigger in the front court?
Yeah, first I just, so Nathaniel doesn't get mad at me for being the only one who didn't mention him. I'll just slide in a happy belated birthday to him. But yeah, in terms of front court, I think probably he'll lean a little smaller. And obviously you could play two of the Lyles, Nicholson, Powell combination together, especially with Nicholson's ability to space the floor a little bit. But I think the wing depth here is such a strength for this team that it's going to make sense to probably have wings at 2, 3, 4 and be a little interchangeable defensively.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us for this live show, Blake. Obviously, Raptors beat reporter for The Athletic. Make sure you catch all his work that he'll be doing for covering Team Canada as well at this tournament.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me on.
Now, Javon was lucky enough to catch up with some of our Canadian hoop stars back in December, just talking about the importance of representing the nation and what it means to do something big for Canada in this moment. Let's check that out.
It's been 20 years since a Canadian men's team has competed at the Olympics. However, there's a new, exciting wave of talent north of the border that's taken the NBA by storm. The Canadian men's team are yet to qualify for the Tokyo Olympics. Assuming they do, what do they expect of themselves on the biggest international stage?
A gold medal.
Expect to win
gold.
We're thinking to win.
Gold, that's the goal.
I don't see why we should shoot for anything less.
Now Joseph looks around, puts up another. This ought to fill them with a lot of confidence and self-belief.
That's where we are now, in Canada. I think, there have been times in years past where maybe the thought, many years ago, where the thought was, let's get in, let's compete. I think at all levels now, when our teams are going into competition, we're thinking to win. And when we get to the Olympics, we're going no holds bar directly to that podium.
It's not going to be easy. We have to play well, but we've got a great coach. We've got a lot of talent. We've got some players that are really committed. I know they're very excited about the opportunity because, playing in the Olympics is it only comes around once every 4 years.
I believe that because they're in the NBA and they're playing against the best, that they expect to win. We're getting to the situation now where we have a nice young crop, a mix of some veterans, and I expect something special from those guys.
We just all need to be there and to play. That's it. I feel like if we get all our talent on the floor, it'll take care of itself.
Every country got their play, and Giannis played for Greece. USA, they got everybody playing. We need to start doing the same thing.
It's something that is similar to, what Team USA has, where you have all these talented players, and you're trying to figure out how are you gonna get them all on the same page and all committed to this goal in the summer.
We're just as good as the Americans. I think they play basketball, they breathe, they eat just like we do. And I feel like we do have a lot of talented players on our roster, and we can compete with anybody in the world.
We got to find a way to make people really want to play for Canada. And I think it's coming, and I think people want to represent the country. People want to win.
I love the feeling of playing for my country when I go out there represent something that's bigger than me.
It's really up to us to get everybody on the same page and really go for the goal. That's the goal, is to get on that podium and wave our flag proudly.
All right, we got our quality time with Blake. Now we've got NBA TV Canada host, Raptors host, and she's also hosting Swish Inside the WNBA now. Savannah Hamilton, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. And I heard that there's a 3-on-3 tournament or something happening, but I would like to say that I would like to put my hat in for the Raptors 905 3-on-3 tournament happening with Megan McPeak and Javon, of course. So I'm just gonna put that out there.
I like it. I like it. I like it. All right, let's get right into it. Now, Canada, as we look at this qualifying tournament, obviously they're in the group with Greece and China. On the other side in Group B, you've got the Czech Republic, Turkey, and Uruguay. How does Canada stack up? Because if we go by the rankings, Czech Republic, Turkey, and Greece are all ahead of Canada. Megan, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think no matter who you match up against, whether they were in Group A or Group B, they're both really tough. Like you heard what Blake had to say with regards to the Czech and Turkey, which could potentially be a semifinal finals matchup, depending on how they do against Greece and China. But first they have to get through Greece and China. And I think with everything that we mentioned, Shep mentioning the fact that they have a lack of shooting, something that we haven't seen them have in the past. You lose a guy like Brady Heslip who decided to retire, which I'm really trying to hope that he'll come out of retirement and maybe suit back up and give them some shooting. But that's just a personal hope of mine. And, you don't have the guys like a Kelly Olynyk because they're trying to also focus on being insured with regards to being free agents and everything on the NBA side of things. So you have the lack of shooting, which Greece tries to actually put teams that can't shoot or don't have a lot of shooting into a shooting type of team and try to get the long rebound and get it and run. So I think that's going to be a really tough task. And then you look at the size of China, and that's something that we talked about with regards to Canada not having a lot of size. But I think, to Shep's point, Andrew Nicholson being able to stretch the floor, that's going to actually benefit them defensively, or excuse me, on the offensive end, because it's going to open up the paint for guys like an RJ Barrett to attack, an Andrew Wiggins to attack. So I just want to see them try to get out of their own group first, because that's a tall enough task as it is. But they're going to have to really buckle down on the defensive end and try to take advantage of what they have as an advantage and utilize it to their advantage against some of these teams. But no matter who they end up facing, once they get out of their group, I think is going to be a tough task in the semifinals and the finals.
Savannah, where do you see Canada stacking up against these other 5 teams?
Well, Megan McPeak pretty much hit the nail right on the head there. But I will say this, that China, as much as they are a large team, they're a very tall team, Canada does have the edge on paper roster-wise in terms of talent and NBA talent and experience. Greece does concern me within Group A, if I was to be completely honest, because they have Rick Pitino coaching, who's a fabulous coach. We've seen him on many different levels and in the international stage before. But one thing to note with Greece is that they are missing a key player in Giannis Antetokounmpo, of course, for the NBA playoffs. And they are currently ranked 6th in FIBA. So they're nothing to look past. They will give Canada a run for their money, as I'm sure that they understand that they're the underdog kind of coming into this tournament. But on the flip side, as Megan talked about, like Group B, we got to look at Turkey, as they might see them later on in the tournament. They have a solid core, 3 NBA players on that roster. And I think they also can give Canada some potential struggles going forward in probably towards the finals, if I was to guess.
Javon, what about yourself?
Megan, I agree with you. I think you have to capitalize on what's in front of you first. And first up is Greece, and then you have China. And then you can start to worry about, the other side or how things match up. But when I'm looking at the 2 teams they have in front of them, you have Greece that has, a Nick Kalathis, and Slokas, 2 guards that are really experienced in the international play. They have some size down low, a rim running big, as well as a four-man in Mitoglu who can play inside, outside, and is really skilled. So I think they have a number of pieces that can give you some problems early on. I don't think they have the depth to compete with this Canadian team, as well as they don't have the confidence, obviously missing Giannis, like you mentioned, Savannah. And they have trouble scoring right now. They have trouble scoring. They don't shoot it as well. So I think, that being said, they're going to be tough. Rick Pitino's a tremendous coach. He's had success at the NBA level, collegiate level, international level with Panathinaikos. But they definitely don't have the depth, they don't have the experience, and they obviously don't have the confidence without their stud in Giannis. So I think if Canada's able to utilize their athleticism, they have some guys who can play up, they have some guys who can play down, and despite them having, lacking some size, they do have some pieces that can really beat up on you a bit, some rim protection in Dwight Powell. So they have all the assets that they need to be successful against a team in Greece. I think China's a team that's also going to be able to surprise you because they're a bit more athletic than we would have imagined. Their guards are really fast, speedy, savvy guards, crafty, can get to the basket, can really shoot it. But again, I think, that's where Canada now has a size advantage. When you're looking at the guards of Canada, Corey Joe, Nikhil, these guys bring some length, they bring some toughness, and some size that can compete there. I don't know if China has the experience within their bigs to compete with Canada as well. And they know Andrew Nicholson's body of work. He's played in the CBA. They know he's a bucket. I think they're going to fear him more than Canada, than he's going to fear them.
Yeah, that first game against Greece could be a real tone setter. To borrow some words from Rick Pitino, hey, Greece might be tough, but Giannis and Thanasis are not walking through that door. So Canada, they got to come right
Not
in
a
that
Pitino game shout out.
But let's think even more big picture here. Potentially, if Canada were to make it out of this tournament and get to the Olympics, where do they stack up against, let's not talk about the U.S. We know what they're putting up. That team is looking extremely dangerous, even without the likes of a LeBron or a Chris Paul. But let's look at, a Spain and Australia, Serbia, France, Argentina. Where does Canada stack up against those teams right now? Megan, let's start with you.
So the one thing that I'm really excited about with this Olympics is, and Shep, like you've played international, you've played with Team Canada, so correct me if I'm wrong, but this is probably the most parity across the board that we've seen on both the men's and the women's side when it comes to the Olympic tournament draw. And I think when you look at Team Canada, should they get out of this tournament and qualify and punch their ticket to Tokyo, I think they have to do exactly what Shep just said with regards to this tournament. You need to take it one game at a time, not focus about everybody in your draw and in your group, not focus about everybody in the entire tournament and think, okay, all we got to do is just get to the gold medal game and we can try to see how much we can go toe-to-toe with Team USA or how much we can go toe-to-toe with Spain. Deal with one team at a time and just focus that way. I think that's where they're going to have the most success, is if they zero in and focus one team at a time rather than having that, panoramic view of the entire Olympic Games, because this is somewhere where they have not been in 21 years. The last time, as Shep mentioned, Rowan Barrett Sr. was at the helm as team captain along with friend of the show, Sherman Hamilton, and Steve Nash. That was in 2000 at the Sydney Olympics. So they have to just focus one game at a time, because none of these teams, when they get to Tokyo, none of them are going to be easy tasks to go through. So you've got to take it one team at a time, shoot, one quarter at a time, if you will, because it gets harder after Victoria. And that's the scary thing.
So I'll say thanks for kicking me while I'm down. Just a reminder that my group actually didn't have a chance at the Olympics, or didn't get us there. So thanks for that.
I tried to do it as politely as possible.
Savannah, where do you see Canada stacking up, and are you also the not get too high, not get too low type, and just one at a time?
Definitely the not get too high, not get too low. Take one out of Kawhi Leonard's book there. Javon's still salty, clearly. We'll talk about that another time. But, looking ahead to being realistic, we got to look at, who Canada has and who they don't have in this tournament. They don't have Jamal Murray. They don't have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or Kelly Olynyk with a lot of international basketball experience and just experience in general. So when you stack them up against Spain and Argentina, who thrive in the international game, it's going to be a very tough place to be. It's going to, not to mention, once again, they had to get to the qualifiers first, where they have to play near perfect basketball. And then when they do make it to the Olympics, I'm going to say when, because I'm going to put those good vibes out right now. They have to go through US, who's in their group, France, who's in their group, and Iran. So it's a tough group to get out of. And the top two teams from each of the Olympic groups will be the ones that go on to the quarterfinals, along with the best third place teams within the tournament. So they have their work cut out for them with the structure alone, just who they're facing within their own pool, let alone moving past that. So definitely Team Megan, one game, one quarter at a time. You guys talked about it at the top of the show. The FIBA international whistle is very, very different than the NBA whistle, and it's a shorter game. So that's going to play a factor too.
What about you, Javon? Where do you stand on that?
When you're looking at the talent, this team is going to have the most talent outside of the USA team. So I don't think it's ever going to be a matter of can they stack up with the Spains, Argentinas, or whatever team it may be, because the talent is there. I think for me, the bigger picture is what this message sends for decades and years to come. Just starting to change the narrative, starting to change the culture, and just having some of your better talent buy into the system and creating a culture. When you have the Andrew Wiggins of the world, when you have Jamal Murray, Shai, Nikhil, these guys all buying in and saying, we're committed to this program. We're gonna change how things are done. We want to play. What does that say for the younger generation? Now you start to get a culture of youth that are coming up in your organization, coming up in Canada, and aspire and desire to play for this national team. Then you get to a place where you have continuity, like some of these other teams that you stack up against in FIBA competition, and you know how much that means in FIBA. Is having that experience, having that continuity, having guys that play together, having guys that understand the FIBA game goes far beyond just having the talent. So when I'm looking at it, I'm not concerned with the other teams that Canada may or potentially play in the Olympics or whomever the matchup might be, but It's more about changing the narrative. What does it do? What does this message send to Canada? What does it send, for the players, for broadcast, and just supporting this team as they continue to grow, as they continue to build? Because the first step is these players have made that commitment, and that goes without saying.
Let's get to a Twitter question for us. @Jamel Cutler asks, can Trey Bell Haynes use this Olympic qualifying tournament opportunity to get a look from some of those G League NBA teams? Megan, what do you think?
So it's an interesting question because he has had some experience at the G League level, and it wasn't the greatest of showings from what we've seen. Mind you, he has improved since then. So could he potentially use this as, if you will, a quote unquote audition to try and get into the NBA or the G League? Of course, all of these guys who are not on NBA rosters currently can utilize this as an audition, if you will. But at the same time, with that being said, it is very tough to try and turn this into a roster spot on an NBA team or a G League spot, because if you look at it, it's kind of like what Javon was saying earlier. You get, guy A in, and then who are you taking out? So if he has a great showing, for sure he might get some looks, he might get some training camp opportunities, and that's nothing to be discredited about. But it's the conversation of who are they taking out and removing and cutting from that roster to give him that roster spot. If anything, you could potentially see him in like a two-way situation on multiple teams now that they've got those two-way options on NBA rosters. But I definitely think he should treat this like an audition, but first and foremost, he should be treating this like he's trying to qualify Team Canada for the Olympics and nothing else, point blank, period.
And, just to add to that, Megan, I think sometimes because out of sight, out of mind, we often forget what these players are doing in their respective, pro teams. Trey Bell has been, he was runner-up for MVP in the BBL. I think he led the league in assists this year, I believe 7 assists. NBA scouts, NBA GMs are already aware that they scout those leagues just as much as they scout the NBA. What I think is that question there is situational. What does a team need? If you need a player with the mold of a Trey Bell, then sure, this could be a guy that you bring in, take a closer look at. But I think this would only be a situation where it solidifies what they already know, because his body of work is already there. He's a tremendous player. He's really good in the pick and roll, getting down, he'll get into the basket. So it's all dependent on what you need, and we've seen that. Michael Mulder is a perfect example of somebody, may not have been on NBA radars up until his big break, and there was a need for him, there was a need for his skill set, and he took advantage of it. So could that be a Trey Bell Haynes situation? Absolutely. Do we have a crystal ball? No, but he's definitely matured since his last stint, like you said, Megan, at I believe it was NBA Summer League and G League experience. He's grown. He's become a better player. I think it also helps that his coach is one of his former coaches. Gordy Herbert is an assistant with the national team right now. Former coach of mine as well. Tremendous coach. A basketball mind. So having somebody with that helps you with your confidence there as well. He's just going to continue to grow. I think that's it's a great question. But I also think it's situational. It's not going to be a clear-cut answer for that one. It just depends on the need of an NBA team.
And when you're on... Oh, sorry.
No, go right ahead.
When you're on the Olympic stage, or the world stage in this case, competing at a very high level, trying to win, and that should always be your first concern, not just trying to make an NBA G League roster or an NBA roster. If you show out there, that is your audition, that is your tryout. If you don't make it to the G League afterwards, if you don't make it to the NBA, that's going to be a great look for future contracts overseas as he's continuing to play there as well.
Let's get into a quick rapid fire here. Okay, we've got the hype up. Everyone's ready for this moment. Tuesday, Canada versus Greece. Obviously, we'll do a preview show for that one as well. Let's get a score prediction from each of you. Savannah, what do you have? Canada, Greece. What do you have for us?
Woo, man, I don't know if a score prediction. I'm going to say, I don't know. I'm not a fortune teller, so I don't know if I can say the exact score. It's going to be like 100 something. Oh, I got Canada. I have to say Canada.
Javon, what about you?
No, but I think for Canada, it's they haven't had any exhibition games or friendly games like they've called it in Europe. But, you know, they have a number of guys. I think it's going to be a messy game because now you're not playing against yourself, knowing your own sense, knowing how to cheat plays, defend plays, but, you know, a whole different team. So, but, you know, obviously I'm rocking with Canada here until I get on air tomorrow. Then we got to be neutral. But it's going to be a tough match. Again, like you have, you know, two really heady and experienced guards with Greece. So I think, you know, Canada will run away with it. But it's just going to boil down to Canada just being that much more athletic, that much more deep, and just wearing down this Greek team.
Megan, you got something for us?
Okay, so since nobody wants to give a score, I'll be that person. I got Canada over Greece in overtime.
Wow.
89-86.
Wow.
Overtime, Megan.
Okay.
She just wanted to go against me here.
No, she wanted.
I mean, like, we got to get spicy, right?
We have to, clip this clip right here. If it comes true, Megan, go buy yourself a lottery ticket.
I got Canada winning 76-68. I don't see any current Raptors on this Canadian roster, so I'm saying there's no game one loss here. You don't have any Raptors, so there's no game one loss coming.
Shots fired.
Shots, Vivek.
That's going to wrap it up for this episode. Thank you so much for joining us live. Savannah Hamilton, thank you for joining us for this. We will have a live preview episode coming for you before the Greece game at 6 p.m. So make sure you catch us for that on CBC Olympics. For now, that's going to wrap it up. And stay tuned for the next one.